So today we're making pumpkin chocolate layered cheesecake. So to start off, we have to do the crust, and you need a 9 by 13 baking pan. You can grease it with butter. Usually I would just take a stick of butter and rub it around, but today I decided to use parchment paper instead. And so I started by folding the parchment paper to get the lines of the pan, and then I just cut it along the edge and folded it in to kind of get it more of the shape of the pan. And once I pour my ingredients in, it'll push against it and hold it up. Make sure you use parchment paper if you do this and not wax paper. Wax paper will burn and you don't want a fire in your kitchen. So parchment paper, or just run around it, like rub a stick of butter around it, and that'll be fine too. So I did that ahead of time. And then you need 1 1/4 cups crushed graham cracker crumbs. You can buy a box of already crushed graham cracker crumbs, or you can give it to a child. Just if you just have the graham crackers in your house, put them in a Ziploc bag and smash them up, or have a kid smash them up, or in this case, I had my husband smash them up for me. You need 1/4 cup of sugar and 1/3 cup of butter. So when you have the stick of butter, it has the different measurements on it. So you just cut it off at the 1/3 cup and then melt it in the microwave. And so this is for the crust. We need to do this first. So I'm just gonna add my ingredients to a bowl. So just the graham cracker crust and then the sugar. And we wanna mix those up first. And then I will add my butter. So just melted butter, and we melted it in the microwave. Nothing too fancy. So you just want to mix it up until it's this like crumbly texture, and then we'll press it into the bottom of our pan. So it'll kind of like be able to pack together a little bit, you'll notice, if you press it against the side of the bowl. So that's how you can also tell that it's mixed. So here's my pan. And then you just use your hand to press it to the sides of the pan. I'm going to use a food glove because my nails are a little bit long right now and I don't want to get graham cracker and butter stuck under my nails. But you can just use clean hands as well. You don't want to be able to see the paper or the bottom of your pan. You just need to even it out and press it down. Alright, there we go. And so you can already see it's holding up the sides of my paper already. And then this we just set aside. The butter will kind of cool and solidify a little bit and hold it in place. And then we'll go to making the rest of our cheesecake. Alright, so for this, Next part of the recipe, we need 2 bricks of softened cream cheese. And this is because we're gonna mix it up, it needs to be soft. If you're planning ahead, you can set these out the night before, they won't go bad. They'll just be nice and soft when you are ready to bake. So 2 bricks of cream cheese, 3 eggs, 1 cup of pumpkin puree, 1 3/4 cup sugar. Oh, about the pumpkin puree too, make sure it is 100% pure pumpkin puree. You don't want pumpkin pie filling. So usually the pumpkin pie filling will have a pie on the box, and the pure pumpkin, canned pumpkin will just have a pumpkin. So just make sure you pay attention to that at the store when you get it. Alright, so we need the 2 8-ounce packages of cream cheese, 1 3/4 cup sugar, 3 eggs, 1 canned pumpkin puree, a half teaspoon of pumpkin spice. You can buy, I made my own because I don't have any, but it's much easier if you just buy it at the store. It'll be in the spice section. A half teaspoon of vanilla extract. Make sure it's not vanilla flavor. You want like the real vanilla extract. And 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Alright, so we'll start by preheating the oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit, which I've already done, so the oven will heat up as we are mixing and preparing everything. We prepared our graham cracker crust. So now we need to, in my mixing bowl, beat the cream cheese and the 1 3/4 cup sugar with an electric mixer. So I have a fancy mixer, but if you have a hand mixer, that's fine too. It says on medium speed until smooth. And then we'll add our eggs one at a time, and then we will add our add the pumpkin puree, the spice, the vanilla, and the salt. The fun part is trying to figure out how to open the packaging. Alright. 1 brick. Two bricks. Scrape the sides and make sure everything is well mixed. It's not quite there yet. It's not quite creamy enough. I want to mix it a little bit longer. I just want to make sure we don't miss anything. says beat until smooth. This looks pretty smooth to me. So now we will add eggs one at a time. And that's to make sure that they get fully incorporated. That's the fancy baking way to say it. Get my green bean ready. And you want to beat it on low speed, otherwise you'll have eggs flying all over your kitchen. Number one. Number two. And number three. Wash your hands. All right, now we're gonna add our pumpkin puree, which will give it a fun orange color. I'm just gonna let this mix in a little bit before I add my spices. Okay, I'm gonna scrape the bowl with my spatula just to make sure there's no cream cheese hanging on. Oven's ready, but I am not ready. Okay, so now it's our half teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. And half teaspoon of vanilla. But I never actually, I always do more on accident. That's okay. And then a quarter teaspoon salt. I don't really measure salt, it's about that much. That's fine. Okay. Alright, our next step involves melting chocolate on the stove with a little bit of butter, so we'll have to switch scenery for that in a moment. For the next part of the recipe, we're going to take 1 1/4 cups of our batter and set it aside. This is the part that we're going to turn into the chocolate layer. Yum. So just keep that aside. And then on the stove in a small saucepan, we are going to put 1 cup of chocolate chips. And 2 tablespoons of butter. Oops, I had some, they didn't want to come out. I'm just using the little bit of leftover butter from what we used for our graham cracker crust. It's about 2 tablespoons. You can tell by the markings on the side if you want to be more precise, but I'm not too worried about it being so exact. Make sure your pan is really dry also, because water has a negative effect on chocolate when you're trying to melt it. It will keep it from melting, it'll make it solidify. So I've got my stove on low. You don't want to do it very hot. Chocolate can burn very easily. So I want to keep it on the heat until it's just barely melted. I'll still see some lumps of chips in it. That's okay. We'll take it off the heat and it'll continue to melt. You don't want to over melt the chocolate or make it too high. Actually, I should have added the butter first, because then it would have, right now my chocolate's melting faster than the butter. If I started my butter first, then we'd be more even. Oh well. When you make it, you can start melting the butter before you add the chocolate. You can learn from my mistake. It'll still turn out okay though. You definitely don't want to walk away from the chocolate, because that's when it will burn. Even though it seems like it's slow, you want to keep it moving. So we've added the chocolate to our pumpkin pie mixture and mixed it up. So you can see it's mixed. This is going to be our first layer of our cheesecake. So we're going to pour it into our prepared pan. Alright, so now we're going to add the chocolate to our prepared pie crust. Use my spatula to get all of the batter out of the bowl. So for baking, a good spatula and a good wooden spoon are like key tools when you bake. Very helpful and very useful. I'm just going to use my spatula to spread it across the pan. We don't want to see any graham cracker, and we want to try to even it out so one part doesn't have more batter than the other parts. And then we will put this in the oven for 15 minutes. Let me put a little wiggle. All right, so see you in 15 minutes. All right, so our chocolate layer has been in the oven for 15 minutes. So our final step before we bake it for a long time is to spoon our beautiful pumpkin layer on top. So whatever batter you have left is gonna go on top. This might not be completely solidified, so we're just gonna gently spoon it on because we don't want it to like plop in the middle and then push the other chocolate batter to the sides. Okay, so I said I was gonna spoon it on and then I poured it, but you know. It seemed to be okay. Okay, and handy dandy spatula to get the last little bit of the batter. This is pretty liquid, so it just seems like it's evening out on its own, which is very nice. So this will go in the oven for 40 to 45 minutes. Every oven is different, so I'm gonna check mine after 40 minutes to make sure it's not burned. And the way you check it is when you pull it out a little bit, you just give it a little shake. And if the middle is wiggly and moves a lot, then it's not done. So we want to cook it until it's set in the middle. So when you give it that little shake, it doesn't move at all. So that's how you'll know that it's done. All right, so this is gonna go back in the oven and for 40 to 45 minutes at 325 degrees Fahrenheit. So I just pulled it out of the oven. There's no jiggle, but we're gonna let it sit for 30 minutes. When it's been about 25 minutes, we will make our final step of this process. I know there's lots of steps, but it's really not that hard. So the final step is to mix 1 1/4 cup sour cream with 1/4 cup of sugar, and we'll layer that on top. So after about 25 minutes, that'll take about 5 minutes to mix up. So you want it to cool for 30 minutes and then add that final layer. All right, so our cheesecake has been cooling for about 30 minutes. I think I forgot to mention before that I baked it for about 48 minutes. At 45 minutes, it was still a little too jiggly, so I left it in for about 3 more minutes. It's still warm, so we're gonna add our sour cream mixture to it. So I have 1 1/4 cup sour cream here in my measuring cup, and then I'm gonna add 1/4 cup of sugar to it. So it'll be like a sweet and tangy topping for the cheesecake. So you want to make sure the sugar is completely mixed in with the sour cream. And I know this seems like a really weird thing to put on top of the cheesecake, but it will taste really, really good. I promise. Okay, I think that's about mixed in. So we're gonna, again, like gently pour it onto the cheesecake because it's not fully cooled yet. So we don't want it to like spread anywhere that it's not supposed to go. So this, when you cut into it, it'll give you like a nice chocolate layer, pumpkin layer, and then a white layer. So it's very festive for like fall and Thanksgiving. Just use my spatula to get out every little bit of this sour cream. Try to evenly spread it around. The heat from the cheesecake will kind of help it to loosen up a little bit. It'll get kind of melty, so you can spread it a little bit easily. And the cheesecake kind of, as it cools, it sinks down, so you'll have like this little edge along the top. So once we're done spreading this all over the top, making sure it's even, then we want to let it cool for 1 more hour and then cover it and put it in the fridge for 3 to 24 hours before serving. So that's just to kind of help it solidify completely all the way, and it'll help it be cold all the way through. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope you try it. Don't be intimidated by all the steps. They're really, each step is not super complicated. It's just kind of a lot of moving parts, it feels like, but it's totally worth it once you try your cheesecake at the end.